Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vānaprastha. Yamuna Tira Vānaprastha. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vānaprastha. Jamuna Tira Vānaprastha. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paravajakacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paravajakacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamaduriye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta prayesha badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama shloke Bhakti bhavati naistiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service unto the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed, almost to nil. And loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in the best of songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Okay, I didn't expect to give class, so need an extra second here. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 13th day of December, 2024 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in Canto 7, The Science of God, Chapter 15, Instructions for Civilized Human Beings. Texts 38 and 39. We'll chant 38 together. Grāhastha-āśrama kriyatyago vratatyago vatorapi tapasvino grāmaseva bhikshur indriyalolata grāhastha-āśrama kriyatyago vratatyago vatorapi tapasvino grāmaseva bhikshur indriyalolata gṛhastha-āśrama 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 kriyatyago vratatyago vatorapi tapasvino grāmaseva lolata. Mateus, can you do it? Gṛhastha-āśrama thanks. Vratatyago vatorapi tapasvino grāmaseva bhikshur indriyalolata. Dvija. Gṛhastha-āśrama kriyatyago vratatyago vatorapi tapasvino grāmaseva bhikshur indriyalolata. Anyone online?
Gṛhastha-āśrama kriyatyago
gṛhastha-āśrama kriyatyago
vratatyago vatorapi
vratatyago vatorapi
tapasvino grāmaseva
tapasvino grāmaseva
bhikshur indriyalolata.
Bhikshur indriyalolata. Okay, I'll chant the second verse and read half the synonyms. Ashrama prasadayete kalv ashrama vidambanaha devamaya vamudhang stan upekshetam kampaya. Grahastasya. For a person situated in householder life. Kriyatyagaha. To give up the duty of a householder. Vratatyagaha. To give up vows and austerity. Vatoha. For a brahmacārī. Api. Also. Tapasvinaha. For a vānaprastha. One who has adopted a life of austerities. Grāmaseva. To live in the village and serve the people therein. Bhikshoho. For a sannyāsī who lived by begging alms. Indriyalolata. Addicted to sense enjoyment. Translation. It is abominable for a person living in the gṛhastha-āśrama to give up the regulative principles. For a brahmacārī not to follow the brahmacārī vows while living under the care of the guru. For a vānaprastha to live in the village and engage in so-called social activities. Or for a sannyāsī to be addicted to sense gratification. One who acts in this way is to be considered the lowest renegade. Such a pretender is bewildered by the external energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and one should either reject him from any position, or taking compassion upon him, teach him, if possible, to resume his original position. I'll say, you say. It is abominable for a person living in the gṛhastha-āśrama to give up the regulative principles. For a brahmacārī not to follow the brahmacārī vows while living under the care of the guru. For a vānaprastha to live in the village and engage in so-called social activities. Or for a sannyāsī to be addicted to sense gratification. One who acts in this way is to be considered the lowest renegade. Such a pretender is bewildered by the external energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And one should either reject him from any position, or taking compassion upon him, teach him, if possible, to resume his original position. Srila Prabhupada's purport. We have repeatedly stressed that human culture does not begin unless one takes to the principles of Varṇāśrama-dharma. Although grahastha life is a concession for the enjoyment of sex, one cannot enjoy sex without following the rules and regulations of householder life. Furthermore, as already instructed, a brahmacārī must live under the care of the guru. Brahmacārī gurukule vasandanto gurorhitam. If a brahmacārī does not live under the care of the guru, if a vānaprastha engages in ordinary activities, or if a sannyāsī is greedy and eats meat, eggs, and all kinds of nonsense for the satisfaction of his tongue, he is a cheater and should immediately be rejected as unimportant. Such persons should be shown compassion, and if one has sufficient strength, one should teach them to stop them from following the wrong path in life. Otherwise, one should reject them and pay them no attention. Om jnana timarandasya jnanandana shalakaya chakshu unmidatam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So this chapter is entitled Instructions for Civilized Human Beings. And we can see that they're very strict. Narada Muni has gone through describing to Yudhishthira the different varnas and ashrams, and now he's describing, especially in the ashrams here, how abominable it is to enter the ashram and take vows and then to deviate and to act against the principles of that ashram. And it's truly miraculous that Prabhupada could start this movement, establish a brahmacārī ashram, and set the rules for grūhasthas, and then sannyāsīs. He had sannyāsīs also. He was very. He had great faith in the power of the holy name to purify even these lechas and yamanas in the Western world from their abominable behavior and character and all of the impurities that they were carrying with them by their activities and into that life, and even in more impurities created in the lives that they're leading. So he showed that by the power of the holy name, by the power of the Guru's instructions and those who surrender to them, one can become tremendously purified. There's a couple of verses in the third canto that Devahuti speaks to Kapila Dev about the great power of the holy name to purify. The most famous one is the whole bata shapacho do gariyan yad jigragre vartate namatubhyam te pus tapaste juhuvu sasnaraya brahmanucho nama gunantiyete. A whole is an expression in Sanskrit that means, oh, how wonderful it is. There's another word that's also pretty amazing. It's in that same category, but it's even more striking. Ahaha. Have you ever seen that? Ahaha. When something is really wonderful and amazing and positive, I think. A whole can also be for things that are startlingly bad, but this is startlingly good. How amazing it is. Oho bada shapacho togari. Even those who are dog eaters, how glorious they are. If simply on the tip of their tongue the name is vibrating. It doesn't say how glorious they are to follow these principles. Just say, just chanting. Yajigrai vartate namatubhim. Your name, she's speaking to Kapila Dev as an incarnation, as her son. Tepus tabus. They must have in previous lives performed all kinds of austerities, studied the Vedic literatures, performed sacrifices, visited the holy places, all these things. They say that she's describing how fortunate it is. And that, I remember when I first read that verse, I didn't remember doing any of those things in my previous life. Certainly on the tip of my tongue and the many other devotees who I was living with, the name was being vibrated on the japa and going out in Harinam and so forth. But you can see, and to this day you can see, how purifying really taking up the Sankirtan movement with sincerity is. So many people, devotees came. Some, many grew up very fortunately, especially in India, in devotional families, or at least those who are following Vedic ways as far as possible. But in every case, there's a tremendous transformation that takes place if you really follow carefully. And that, of course, means following the don'ts as well as the do's. It's one thing to chant, but it's also necessary to get the full benefit to give up illicit sex, intoxication, meeting, and gambling seriously. And if you deviate from that down the road, then I've seen it over the years, is that you lose your taste for the holy name, and especially what happens is you become more prone to offending devotees, because you're feeling, unable to follow. Let's just put it that way. And oftentimes the first thing that goes is some illicit sex that you're experiencing. And suddenly, I always tell the story, maybe some remember because I've been in class so long. There's this one devotee in LA, of course she'll remain unnamed, but many devotees at that time, in the mid-70s, LA I think was the main temple in the world, especially after the consolidation of the BBT there in April of '75. And then we had the marathon, 17 books in 2 months, so forth. But the temple was packed for especially the morning program, and also the evening program was very well attended. Everyone was coming. Sometimes they would leave the temple and go up and down Second Avenue and do a Harinam. It was amazing. This particular devotee was having trouble in his household, vows and so forth. And he was standing right in front of Rukmini Dwarkadish, which is a wonderful place to be. You're feeling the full force of their mercy and seeing them so nicely. But he could not look at those deities. I was standing right behind him. He was looking left, looking right, because he felt, ashamed because he deviated. And so what that indicates is that it's a real damage to your Krishna consciousness. And what you don't realize, if you're going along nicely in day by day, and you're following the four regs and everything, that every day is a blessing. That you're getting power from Krishna to follow these things. Get up early, chant, do all the things we do, and perform austerities, whatever your service may be. And you're feeling no one can deny it, you're feeling a transcendental pleasure in doing that. When you can actually do it, and you come before the deities. And I always tell this story. Forgive me, I've told it before, but it's indicative, and I've experienced that also. That if you're really doing your service nicely, and you made some sacrifice, and everything is good, and you come before the deities, they seem to be more blissful. They seem to be smiling at you with a bigger smile, and you appreciate the beauty and the mercy and that wonderful mudra and all the things about the deities. And that's because Krishna is reciprocating with you. We should always remember he's in the heart. And that famous verse, and it's very nice to meditate on it. Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtanak Ridyantaksto Abhadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam. Last word is worth meditating on first. He is our best friend. He's in our heart. Suritsatam. This word Surit, Prabhu would sign his letters. Your ever well-wisher. He's the representative of Krishna, coming outside and giving us the mercy and encouraging us. And Krishna is reciprocating with us. So he's this ever well-wisher in our heart. He says at the end of the 5th chapter, famous peace formula. So what does it mean? First of all, up to that point is discussing about how whatever you do has to increase your desire to hear about Krishna. Otherwise, what's the phrase? Shrama? Shama evi kevalam. You could have some position in the bank or some social position. You should be the president of this or that, and it's entirely useless because you're just waiting to die and reap all the results of your non-Krishna conscious activities, sinful activities. So it's worse than just wasting time. You're digging a hole to go to hell. So. But by contrast, if you have developed, and in the previous verses describe how one develops a taste for Krishna consciousness, for hearing about Krishna. And so then when Krishna, he knows, he's in our heart. He knows that, this person is hearing about me, chanting about me, and relishing. So then what does he do? He cleanses away the abhadras in the heart. That cleansing is the whole important process. The whole process is one of purifying us from those things which are keeping us from understanding our real relation with Krishna and relishing everything about that relationship. Chaito Darpana Marjan. So what does he do? What's the abhadras? The abhadras are all these latent desires, lust, anger, and greed, doubts, you see, about the philosophy, doubts that you can do it, is Krishna really out there? All of these things are impurities that block us from taking up Krishna consciousness or progressing in Krishna consciousness. So he's purifying. So then what happens? Then the verse we chanted at the beginning. Nashta prayesha badreshu nityam bhagavad sevya bhagavad yuttama shloke bhakti bhavati naishtiki. Now that naishtiki is synonymous with the shraddha that Lord Chaitanya defines to Sanatana Goswami. Famous. It's not the adau shraddha, which is, Prabhupada said, it's respect, it's interest, it's enough to bring you into the association of devotees. But you're not less confirmed and completely convinced about Krishna. You're just beginning. But the nishta, which is in the middle of that famous ladder from shraddha to prema, that's the shraddha that Lord Chaitanya defines. Shraddha shabde vishwas kohe sudidhanishchoy Krishna bhakti kole sarva karma krita hoy. Shraddha, real, pure shraddha. Shabde is defined. Vishwas koya, a very firm determination, sudridhanishchoy, which is very, very strongly held that what? That just by practicing the principles and practices of Krishna consciousness, all my desires will be fulfilled. I don't have to, it's not like, well, now I'm doing my bhakti, now I'm going to do my other thing, Bhakti has to be a hoitaki and a pratiyata, uninterrupted and unmotivated, materially motivated, to fully satisfy the self. So, that last 5 verses there, of those verses from 1 to 6 to 1 to 21, is describing the whole fruit of the process. So he starts out with that Srinvatam, and if you follow it nicely and you have the taste and you become fixed and regulated, then Nashta then when almost all of them are gone, probably say, he's so liberal, say at least 70%. Not almost all, but Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu, these unwanted things, lust, anger, greed, doubts, nityam bhagavata sevaya, by always serving the Bhagavatam, by hearing, chanting, explaining, and following the instructions. This is also service. That's a very important part of the service. Nityam bhagavata, and serving the person Bhagavan. Those two. Prabhupada makes it very clear in the purport. Nityam bhagavat uttama shloke bhakti bhavati naisiki. Then your bhakti to the uttama shloka. I love that word because it means he was described in the greatest shlokas, the greatest Sanskrit poetry. Bhakti bhavati naisiki. It becomes fixed, you have great faith. And then that's not the end of it, because then it says, evam, thus, evam prasanna manaso bhagavat bhakti yogataha bhagavat tattva vijnana mukta sangasya jayate. So now he's describing even greater, actually I skipped one. The one after Nashta Prayeshu is Tadadadastamo Bhava, Kamalo Bhadayaschahe, Cheta Eta Unavitam Stitam Sattve Prasidati. So that as you progress through this chanting and hearing process chiefly, then you rise above the modes of passion and ignorance, and you get fixed in goodness and even pure goodness. Right? He says, Tada Rajas Tamo Bhava, the nature of passion and ignorance. Kama, lobha, and their results, which is lust and greed, etc. Cheta eta anavadam. Your consciousness is no more affected by them. You're fixed in the goodness. Kama, lobha, cheta eta anavadam stitam sattve prasidati. You're fixed in goodness and even inching up toward pure goodness, and you become prasidati, much more pleased in life, much more, and you're enjoying Krishna consciousness. And then Nashta prayeshu bhadreshu. No, I'm sorry. And then evam prasanna manaso. Then you prasanna manaso, that's the quality of Brahmabhuta, right? Brahmabhuta prasanatma. Evam prasanna manaso bhagavat bhakti yoga, by the process of Bhagavat bhakti yoga as described before. Bhagavat tattva vijnanam. Then comes revelation. The tattva, the vijnan is scientific knowledge, which probably means seeing directly. Jnana is essential, but it's a foundation for getting realized knowledge. I know that I'm the soul, not the body, but I haven't yet fully realized that. I haven't had a revelation that there's no question about it. We can fall back into identifying with the body and like that. No. Bhagavat tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate. Jayate means jai. You're victorious. You're free from all of the material attachments. And then comes the final verse in the series, which describes a state of realization. Vidyate vidya grantis chidyante sarvasankshaya chiyante jasikarmani drishta evatmanishure. And I'm going to speak a little bit about that last phrase because there's some confusion in the translation we had. So vidyate vidya, all the knots in the heart. We should know that, life after life, we've been tying these knots of material desire. And they take us from one body to another. It's not that when you die, those knots are gone. No, that's in the subtle body, that's in the mind. And so here it says, vidyate vidya, all the knots in the heart that are binding you to this world, material desires, are cut. Vidya vidya, chidyante sarvasankshaya, all your doubts are destroyed. Why? Because Bhagavat tattva vijnana, you've had direct experience of Bhagavan. In the previous verse, that vijnana means seeing and feeling the presence personally. Bhagavat tattva vijnanam, mukta vidya chidyante sarva sankshaya chiyante chasya karmani, all your karma is eradicated, and in drishta evatmanishure. Now there was some confusion about this last phrase. what Prabhupada had is, one sees oneself, the controlling factor or something like that. The controlling factor, which is the word for Ishvara, means the Lord. That's God. But the way they find it is. And I agree, we didn't know what to do with that. To put a comma in there, one sees oneself. That one sees oneself means you're seeing your soul. It's not you're seeing the God, right? If you say oneself. And the controlling factor. What that means? That means the self is now the Ishvara? No. Wait a minute. That can't be. So I agree, we didn't go there. So he made it the self instead of oneself. And then he took from the purport, which is very good, one's master. You see, one's master. This is Krishna. You see. So one sees the self, the master, or something like that. So then the question, well, why should it be a lower S self? It should be the capital S. If you're seeing the super soul, who is your master, fine, But Prabhupada distinctly said oneself. So anyway, I'm not going to go into detail how we determine, but the next sentence, which is the first sentence of the purport, says that when one sees oneself, then one sees Krishna simultaneously. In other words, there's no doubt about it. You see? So now it reads, one sees oneself and one's master. Both. You see yourself and you understand your relationship to your master, who is Krishna in the heart, like that. Anyway, the point is that it all culminates in that. And you understand your sarup, you understand your relationship to Krishna, and you're fixed in that, even in this material world. So all of that begins with, at the very beginning, which is Savai Pungsang Parodama Yoto Bhagahoitaki Apatiyatayama Supersedity. If you want to attain that state of supersedity, then you have to take up that dharma, which will bring you closer and closer to a realization of Adhokshaja. Now, Adhokshaja is the transcendental Lord beyond the reach of the senses and mind at the present time. But still, if you have faith, and this is where the guru is essential in association, you have faith in the process, and you can see that the guru himself is manifesting these symptoms of prasanatma and intolerance and so forth. And so you have faith enough to begin the process, you see, of Dharma. And then he goes, I'm not going to go through the whole series, but it's very important, and we made a book out of it called Dharma, the Way of Transcendence, which I think is distributed pretty widely in India. I know it's printed there. They printed there. So anyway, but it all depends on having the strength of character and strength of will to follow the principles of one's ashram, whatever it may be, you see, strictly, under the guidance of the spiritual master and the Shastra. We have the facility, we've been given the knowledge and the books, and we have the environment. Prabhupada worked so hard to produce these temples. We have seniors who are channeling Prabhupada in the books, who are examples. They have to be examples. This is why it's so dangerous. You have like the Brahmins who can't, or the sannyāsīs, who, suddenly, for one reason or another, they break the rules. And how abominable that is, because in a society, especially in a society of devotees, they're the ones who can support the faith of those who are below them. If you take shelter of someone and you're following their instructions and you have faith that they're also, I'm going to use this word because you know what it means, channeling, the words of the Paramahansa of Srila Prabhupada, and you're following what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, then that's why people are following you. Because you're giving an example. You're attending the programs nicely. You're showing detachment from the objects of the senses, and you're eager to serve Krishna and chant here about Krishna. And you have a background, maybe years, where you've been following this. So therefore, you have the spiritual strength to infuse faith in others, to plant these bhakti seeds, which is so bhakti lata bija. Is planted by the spiritual master, and those who are faithfully following him, they can also plant those seeds. And what's the planting? What does the seed consist of? Well, probably it's the holy name, but it's also the faith in the process, that if I chant this mantra, I can also advance and I can experience some of the wonderful things that are described in the Shastra. And then you can see that, but then if suddenly that person is no longer there, or they did something abominable, then that has a tremendous effect on all the followers. And we unfortunately, we've had this experience in ISKCON. But the whole movement almost dissolved in the 80s. I don't know, you were like, what, 5 years old? In 83? 10 years old. But you were aware, you're being there in Mayapur, right? Yeah. 86 was such a critical year, quincentennial. I mean, it's a quincentennial. And there was a whole meeting there, and now, because those who have been given this assignment of Srila Prabhupada to be gurus, I mean, he had to do it because the movement needed that, it needed it. And these are the most trusted preachers. They had proven themselves in the field, and so forth. But it was difficult for many of them, because one thing was the model that they had for the guru was Srila Prabhupada. But they shouldn't have been taking that this exclusive Vyasa. And many of you don't know, you remember maybe the simultaneous guru pujas? You remember that? That was so bogus. They didn't want to add a whole other guru puja period, because the morning program every minute counts. So okay, we'll have to consolidate it. So all the new disciples will be worshiping their new guru, who may even be there sitting on his own Vyasa-san, and the old disciples be in the same group. It was bogus. It was completely bogus. So anyway, and it was difficult, and a majority, let's just say a majority of them couldn't handle it. It was too much. The power, the money, anyway, it was a very dangerous situation. But by the sincerity of the next year, there was like a group of 50, I think, basically, of senior preachers who weren't gurus. Prabhupada picked 11 out of them. But they were very sincere preachers, and they got together and they were able to continue the movement and basically broaden the whole who could be a guru. And no more just 11. There's going to be others. So, but very much this verse here, you can see it happening when the sannyāsīs, especially those who have been given this guru assignment, weren't able to follow, and it caused havoc in the movement. So many devotees left at that time. But the movement survived because of enough sincere devotees who were ready to get together and figure out what to do, because it was Prabhupada's movement, and it was saved, and it's been going on ever since. And it's not that there's no problems anymore, but there's an understanding of the dangers of deviation and how that has to be dealt with as soon as possible. And it goes all the way down. He's talking about a brahmacārī as well, gṛhastha, all the ashrams. There's a certain description of do's and don'ts for every ashram, and if you want, if you're in that ashram, you have to follow those. Otherwise, it creates havoc in the society, and it can be very detrimental, certainly to one's own Krishna consciousness, as well as the faith, because the whole thing rests on faith, the faith of the mass of devotees. And so, as we get, just by following, you become a senior devotee. So you also have a responsibility to show by your example, so that new people can come and they can get faith and start the process. So that's my take on this particular verse and verses and purport. If you want to have some discussion, I'm open for that. It's heavy words. If a sannyāsī is greedy and eats meat, eggs, and all kinds of nonsense for the satisfaction of his tongue, he is a cheater and should immediately be rejected as important. That doesn't mean that's the only thing. He may be eating vegetarian, he may be eating prasadam, but still doing nonsense. So one has to, that's one of the importance of knowledge. If we're sincere, we should know from the Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, what the standard is, so that if it gets deviation, we can recognize it and act appropriately. Yes, Prabhu.
I'm wondering about, because you were talking about Diksha Guru, 11 gurus. We know that in the Upadeshamrita there's a first verse about the qualification of a guru, and then the 11th canto, about how you should know the conclusions of the Shastra and teach by example, convince people. What are some other things in the standard of GBC in guidelines of accepting a disciple, become a good Diksha Guru? If you could share that with us today.
Well, yeah, one of the essential aspects of that, accepting that assignment, is the willingness to take that responsibility, because Krishna consciousness, you have these two aspects, right? Two parallel lines, if you will. Your own sadhana, in which you're advancing, hopefully, in fact, practicing nicely, and you feel that you're on it. And of course, we're encouraged that in every step, even when you're fairly new, to try to help others. So you have your Sunday feast, where you have people, you have devotees who have been in the movement for less than a year, but they can also preach. They can also certainly give people books and encouragement like that. So the special feature, or one of the main special features of the one who takes the responsibility of guru, is that he's willing to really sacrifice, a lot of his own individual time and bhajan. I mean, the basics have to be there, of course, for the sake of guiding others and taking risks, because Prabhupada made it very clear from the beginning, when you initiate someone, then there's a relationship there, and if the person goes off and follows, then that can affect your spiritual life as well. Prabhupada said, well, if you deviate, then I have to come back to save you. You can imagine, how guilty you feel by that. But it is a tremendous responsibility, and that was one of the things I think that the new gurus were ready for, because there was a tremendous number of people who were ready to take initiation at the end, but Prabhupada, they ran out of time, so but they still want to take initiation. It's interesting, if you look at the record of book distribution, those early 80s were like huge, I mean, even up to today, it's amazing. Because you had all these new disciples, and you had all the old disciples who seasoned book distributors, and book distribution just took off. It was a big plus, But the willingness to preach, to take the responsibility of having disciples, and to have the ability and the purity to sustain even in the difficulties, that's a rare, so that's a very important prerequisite for someone who's aspiring to take disciples. All of the other things have to be there, but as well the determination to make sacrifices for the benefit of others, which is not a given quality. It's an important quality, but it's not always there.
Hare Krishna, thank you, class. I have a question about what difference between jnana and vijnana. This is because of we know that if even Bhaktivinoda Thakur also stressed that if we hear something and not put in our heart and have no experience of this own experience, then it is like garbage, is nothing.
Doesn't really register.
Yeah. And so in this point that also I heard that if a realized person speaks this absolute truth knowledge, transcendental knowledge, then it is real knowledge. But if
what? If I'm sorry, I couldn't understand the accent. If something?
If realized person,
a realized
person speak transcendental knowledge, this is like absolute truth. But if we repeat, we read or something like this, when then we speak about it, then it is like our false ego also, this absolute truth mixed with our false ego. And then this is like not absolute truth, this is like something else.
Yeah, well, The first part is absolutely true. And then Prabhupada makes this point. It's an incredible purport in the fourth canto. I can't forget which verse, I can find it, where he's talking about just the quality of the voice when the spiritual master speaks. It has a special power because it gets mixed with the saffron mercy particles of Krishna's lotus feet, and it has a tremendous power to transform you. And this is why, conversely, we should never hear any glorification of Krishna from non-devotees. Vaishnavo mukodgirtam putam hadikatarmitam shavananaiva kartavyam sarpotishtam nitapaya. Famous verse, I think this is Sanatana Goswami. And a Vaishnava mukodgirtam, from the mouth of a non-Vaishnav, a non-devotee. Putam hadikatam, harikata, the nectar of harikata, which is like purifying otherwise. Shravanam naivakartavam, never hear from them about this glorification of Krishna, because it acts like milk touched by the lips of a serpent, poisonous effect. It has the same taste, superficially, but the effect is different. So yes, that's you know, and I'm telling you, historically in this temple, you probably remember because you were here earlier, we used to have one day reserved for Prabhupada lectures. And was it 1 or 2 days? 1 day? Yeah, you remember the day. And I would, we had the beginnings of the Veda base with the folio, you know, and we had the transcripts on there. So I would pull them off, and I actually, this screen that we had here, that eventually I tried to fix it, was out of, and I fell down and broke, and then that's why I have this new one. But I bought that screen originally for that. We'd set it up, you know, over there, not here. And we would project the words so devotees could follow, because the accent, you know, was difficult. So all of that, and strictly 1 day a week, and they still do it in New Dwarka, I think. Was it Sunday? Huh? In Mayapur they do it on Ekadasi. So because there's something unique about the quality of the voice, about the quality of the words. He's speaking from realization, and that why it can enter into the heart much more easily. But Prabhupada is very eager for us to also speak. In other words, give class, and especially write articles for BTG and all these things, because he understood that even if they're not completely realized, if they're following carefully and they're, you know, making some advancement, they have some realization, then they can also bring others. And especially because they know the audience, you know. Prabhupada, I mean, his articles in BTG, because I worked for many years, we'd always pick a lecture in which he spoke to a Sunday feast or something. Not necessarily to the, you know, internal devotees, which are great lectures, but these BTGs are for people in general. So when Prabhupada would scale, he would speak in a certain way to an outside audience, which he gave many lectures like that. So you're absolutely right that there's a different potency, a greater potency, when a pure devotee speaks out of complete realization. It can move mountains, you know. But that doesn't mean that we should, like you're sitting here, you know. I mean, I'm not moving mountains, you know, but I'm trying to just speak what I've read, and so it's the same words. And in the degree that, you know, I'm following, then it can have some potency. So yes, you're right about that, and that's why we should be very eager to read Prabhupada's books, because it's not the same as hearing him personally, but it's very potent, and he wants us to do that. And when we read his books out loud, you know, it has tremendous potency, and so there's that aspect of it. But as we progress in our devotional service, then when we speak, because there'll be some realization. Realization doesn't happen all at once. There's like the detachment. You know, if you're following strictly, you're living in the ashram, and you're tasting Krishna prasadam, the first thing that goes, in my experience, is any desire to eat any meat. You know, it's very rare that someone, well, I just couldn't take it, I had to go have a hamburger. You know, usually it's sex life, they fall down with it, not with the meat eating. Although we had one poor guy, he was one of the pioneer book distributors in Brooklyn at the time, And he had a van. I don't know if it was his own van that he brought, but anyway, he had a van, and he would go in up in New York State, and he'd call in his scores. I did so many books. It was great. But the poor guy had been a heroin addict, and he was on his own there, and he had all the collections, and eventually we lost him and the van, and it was just gone, That's so. Just like I think one of the lessons of Bharat and the deer, although it's not spoken so much, but I think we can take it. He was alone, it was powerful, he was near Baba, he attained the Baba stage, but he had no association. And so when what would you have done? If you have this poor deer, the mother died out of fright because of the lion, and everything. I guess the lion didn't jump in. They don't go into the water, right? But she was so scared. So now you have this little fawn, probably. And any human being would try to help this little fawn, feeding, So naturally, he developed some attachment. So the point I'm making is that you're absolutely right that a realized soul can enter thousands of hearts, as Prabhupada did. You just hear when you're exposed to it. But at the same time, and this is what Prabhupada wanted us to do, he wanted us also to preach, because that's also a purification. So it's true. But I think that especially now, where why am I sitting here? Well, Govardhan asked me, But the thing is, we're kind of short of speakers, I think we could maybe do one day. Prabhupada, I'll talk to Maharaj if it's okay. Especially when someone, traveling, and they're not all here. And Maharaj give his one, he's going to India this year. Is he planning? Not. Yeah. But anyway, I listen to a lecture every morning of Srila Prabhupada, and it's a wonderful, experience. And there's this. He's in India. You probably know if you listen to Prabhupada lectures. When he gets to the fifth canto, fifth chapter, text 1, he gives like a dozen lectures on that one verse. Wherever he goes, he gives that lecture on that one verse. He did the same thing with 7.1 of Bhagavad Gita earlier on. But that 5.1, is as that whole section, first part of the Rishabhdev's teachings, is so potent. It's like it's got the same feel as this. Nunam pramatta kurate vikarma yadindriya priteya apanoti. Certainly those who are simply after sense gratification are completely mad. One shouldn't waste his human life in like the stool-eating hogs, uses that very word. But what's the alternative? Tapo divyam, putrakayena sattvam, shuddhya brahma saukyam tvanantam. No, practice the austerities that are necessary for advancement. Purify your existence and come to the point of being able to enjoy unending spiritual happiness. Now this word ananta, I think it has two meanings, doesn't it? It means that it doesn't end, but it also means that it's expanding, isn't it? It doesn't have any boundary. I think it can mean that also. So that's Anandam Buddhivardhanam. That's the best I can do on that.
Thank you. Please tell exactly what difference between Vigyan and Gyan.
Oh, Vigyan and Gyan. So Gyan is like you read the Bhagavad Gita, and you eventually get to verse 13, the second chapter. Dehi nosmin yata dehi. And it's a great verse because anyone could, if you just follow it, you say, oh yeah, I remember, when I was a kid, I'm the same person I was when I was 5, 10, 15, 20, So the part that's new is that you're going to get another body, you see. So if you have faith in the Bhagavad Gita and so forth, you say, oh, okay, now I understand transmigration of the soul. But you haven't really realized that. You can't remember your previous life, and you haven't seen the soul, you see. But so Vigyan is when you actually experience it, when perhaps, and this happens sometimes, you can remember your past life, or at least have a out-of-body experience where you can say, yeah, I'm not the body. Body is dead over there, and the doctors are going crazy trying to revive me, and I'm sitting up here by the ceiling watching it go on. That happens a lot. So that's Vigyan. That's realized knowledge, experience. But Gyan is also important, because especially if you have faith in the book and the speaker, then you accept it as true, and that I'll realize it at one point. You see, so knowledge, and in the Western education, the ordinary action, it's full of all kinds of knowledge, but very little Vigyan. You know, you hear about Japan and this and that. If you actually go there, that's more like Vigyan. You see what I'm saying? One is direct experience. That's why Vigyan often means you see it. And in the last verse, that's what he says, gṛhastha-āśrama atmanīśvare. Oftentimes that would be translated as you see the God within yourself, Atmani. In fact, in that very series, the word Atmani came up before, in an earlier verse. And at that point, Baba said, yeah, within the mind, you see within the mind. So Vigyan means directly experiencing. And that's that, you know, and the whole series begins with, in the second line, was it Bhakti adhokshaje. It's practicing bhakti to the transcendent Lord. It's not a name that anyone in Vrindavan would use for Krishna, adhokshaja. It's the transcendent Lord beyond mind, what is it? So avan manasa gochara. That he who is beyond the reach of the words and the mind and the senses. That's the definition of transcendent. Okay, we have to have faith. I don't see him, I don't hear him, but I'm being encouraged by someone who has, you know, and I'm reading the book which is describing it. So I'll practice, and I believe in the practice that I can get to it. So we're on the level of Gyan for a long time. But also Vigyan comes. Vigyan, especially in detachment, where we're practicing Krishna consciousness, and you're following the 4 regular principles, and before long, you don't have a taste for hamburgers anymore. No. I remember I was a big meat eater. You know, it's just like, it's not like, you know, but for some people it's a huge addiction. If you don't, you know, where's the meat? I can't eat without the meat, you know. So you come from that point. So that's Vigyan, when you really see, yeah, I don't have any desire for those abominable things that were polluting me and keeping me, you know, and assuring me a horrible next birth. So that it's not that Vigyan only comes at full realization. It comes along the way. You get realization too. Get Vigyan. All right, we're over time. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.